Now, turning to our program, please welcome Hannah Paul, Customer Success Director at Idea Wake, to introduce our speaker.
Good morning, Rotarians. Good morning. I'm so excited to be here to learn about the future of one of my favorite places in Milwaukee, the Mitchell Park Domes. It is my favorite place to go in any season of the year, whether I'm feeling happy or having a sad day. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to our speaker, Christa Diefenbach. I have known Christa for about a year, and we have become more acquainted the last couple of months. In that time, I have been able to witness firsthand what an asset she is to Milwaukee, and specifically the Mitchell Park Domes. As many of you know, the Dome's future has been unknown for quite some time, and Christa demonstrates all the abilities to lead the charge for their future. Christa is a career innovator who helps nonprofits adopt marketing and technology strategies to maximize revenue and mission impact. She has lived in Milwaukee for 10 years with her husband, 2 kids, mother, dog, 2 cats, and 50 houseplants. She is passionate about the Mitchell Park Domes as it marries all of her great passions in life: plants and green spaces, mid-century architecture, and nature-based education. She has been with the Friends of the Domes for just over 2 years and was hired by the board of directors as a leader who brings the right skill set and passions in order to find a path forward for our beloved Mitchell Park Domes. Please help me in giving Christa a warm Rotary welcome.
Thank you, Hannah, and I want to say thank you for that great introduction, but also thank you for being a fantastic volunteer for Friends of the Domes. I also want to recognize Jeremy Guth, who's out in the audience today at the back table. He's our president of the board of directors. So, we can't do this work alone. It takes lots and lots and lots of hands, and so I really appreciate everybody who helps us to get to where we're needing to go. So I also want to recognize the Rotary for having me here today. I really appreciate the invitation, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the future of our Mitchell Park Domes. So I know that many of you are familiar with the challenges facing the facility, right? So there's been lots of news articles, and the concrete is actually structurally sound. That's what a lot of folks believe, is that, the concrete is failing. But it's the glazing, right? All of those glass windows, they have to be replaced, just like we have to replace windows in our own home after a certain amount of time. Only, of course, there are a lot of glass windows within those 3 domes. Also, the aluminum piping is failing. The HVAC system is very old, and the building itself is not ADA compliant. So in case you thought that this was a presentation about kind of a doomsday, what we need to fret about, it is not. Even though there are a lot of challenges facing the Mitchell Park Domes, what I'm here to talk to you about is a solution and a vision that will address those issues. So I would like to start by just telling you the 3 key takeaways that I'd like for you to leave with today. So if you remember nothing else that I say, please remember these. So first, everyone wants a solution for the Mitchell Park Domes. Second, a solution that checks all the right boxes does indeed exist. And finally, all that is required is that those who have the right pieces of the puzzle, that we come together and we work in concert with one another. So I want to start by telling you how I know this to be true. So there on the screen, you see me with my mother, Lorna Beall. So something you should know about Lorna is that she has been writing children's books for 50 years, but she has never been published. So that does not stop her from writing and submitting time and time again. She'd get feedback, and then she'd go back and she'd rewrite that manuscript and send it off again. Well, she is now 81 years old, and what you're looking at there is her first published book. So just this year, Orange Hat Publishing had decided to publish my Sisu Summer. So for those of you who don't know, Sisu is Finnish for courage, which my mother has most certainly a lot of, right? But what's important about this story is that sometimes the path forward isn't right there in front of us. It might take decades, and for my mom, 5 decades in the making, right? But there is a path forward. There is a path forward for my mom, and there's a path forward for the Mitchell Park Domes as well. So before we can talk about the future, I think it's important to touch on the past. So I want to take you down a trip down memory lane, look at the Mitchell Park and its conservatory. So a lot of people don't realize that the Domes is not the first conservatory in Mitchell Park. It's actually the third. It's the second public conservatory. So if you're looking up on the screen, you'll see that the upper right corner, that was the Mitchell Conservatory. It was built in the late 1800s. And something else to note about Mitchell Park is that it's 62 acres of beautiful park. It was one of the original 6 Milwaukee County parks, and it didn't just have a conservatory. It had many amenities. So you're up on the screen, you'll see the sunken gardens there in the lower left corner. There was a reflection pond, there was a dance pavilion. It was an active park. So bringing us up to the modern day and how the Domes came to be, the Mitchell Conservatory was in disrepair and it needed to be removed. So Milwaukee County Parks decided that they would do a competition. It was a worldwide competition, and architects submitted their ideas for a new design for the Domes. The winner, Donald Grieb, was a Milwaukee architect, and it is said he designed the dome shape based on a beehive. So you can see it there. We're the only conoidal-shaped horticultural conservatory in the world. We started construction in 1959, and the first dome, the show dome, which you see there on the left, was finished in 1964. So I always like to put the context of the domes kind of more in that the history timeline. And so we're talking the mid-century and the post-war era. And the Domes was built in this industrial valley. So if you can imagine smokestacks, and from those smokestacks rose these 3 glorious glass bubbles. They were called daringly unique and beautiful, and a willful act of hope. So you see, the Domes was never a building. It was actually a sentiment. It was this idea that hope lives within all of us. So now, 60 years later, Friends of the Domes and the Mitchell or the Milwaukee County Park System are pleased to be continuing operations at this facility. We are connecting visitors to nature, and we're providing an opportunity for our community to come in and connect with plants. So to talk about the path forward, I need to tell you a little bit about a key piece of the solution, which is my organization, Friends of the Domes. So if you put us on the timeline of that history of Mitchell Park, Friends of the Domes was created in the late 1980s. So that was after those sunken gardens were removed from the park. So that was the last significant amenity that existed in Mitchell Park besides the Domes itself. So it became very clear to the community that it was only a matter of time before the Domes would be on the chopping block as well. And we needed friends, right? Lots and lots of friends. So we are a private nonprofit organization. We run about half of the operations for the Mitchell Park Domes. So a lot of folks don't realize that, but we actually run the gift shop, we run all educational programming, we run all cultural events, membership recruitment, and much, much more. What I want to tell you about our organization is that we are on the move. So if you look at us over the last 2 years, we experienced 150% increase in membership, 150% increase in, 100% increase in membership, 150% increase in school field trip participants, The domes itself, the admissions at the domes increased by 100% over the last 2 years. So how did this happen? Well, it was strategic investments in infrastructure and staff resources. Today, we are 21 staff members strong. We also have hundreds and hundreds of volunteers, including Jeremy and Hannah, and we have almost 5,000 members. So today I'm here to talk to you about the vision Friends of the Domes is putting forward that will create a solution for the Mitchell Park Domes. So I said there are 3 takeaways. The first is that everyone wants a solution. How do I know that? Well, countless surveys. I mean, how many here have completed at least one survey for the Domes, right? Countless surveys, countless listening sessions. We know that everything on that screen is true. This is how Milwaukee feels about the domes. It is beloved, right? The majority of people want to find a solution for the domes. So number 2, a solution that checks all the right boxes does actually exist. So let's talk about what those right boxes are. First, we have to address the many physical limitations of the facility. So I talked to you about those at the beginning of this presentation. It's significant. But we also have to revitalize Mitchell Park more broadly. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why that is in a minute. And then finally, we need a business model that is sustainable. So we were talking about that at the table this morning, that a lot of nonprofit organizations think that nonprofit means no profit. But the fact is, that's not what a nonprofit is. It's a tax status, right? And we have to be able to generate more revenue than we have in expenses so that we can put money away for our rainy day fund and we can deal with future maintenance challenges. All right, so let's dive into those 3 boxes that need to be checked. The physical limitations. So I won't belabor this. We all know that there are many. The Friends of the Domes vision, it's creative repurposing of the current facility to achieve greater mission impact and greater revenue. We also would restore the domes. So that includes replacing the glass, that includes new aluminum, the aluminum fixtures. It also includes a new HVAC system and bringing us up to code so that we are ADA compliant. We also would add a boutique cafe, and we would increase our education and event space significantly. And finally, we would actually shift where the gift shop is currently located to a new location that would allow us to have 400 times the size of a gift shop. So if you guys have been to the domes recently, you'll know that our gift shop's about the size of a postage stamp. But if you think about it, all of that limits our ability to generate operating revenue. And by addressing this, we get at that sustainable business model. So the second issue that I wanted to address is that we have to revitalize Mitchell Park. So a couple things I want you to know about Mitchell Park. First, it's the only significant public green space on the near south side, the most densely populated part of our city that has the largest number of children per capita. So the idea that we have an unsafe park is completely unacceptable. We cannot address the issues facing the domes without addressing its home. So the Friends of the Domes vision makes a major investment in the park itself. That includes infrastructure in the park, but also includes ongoing programming. Because what we know is that an active park is a safe park. So if you think about that Mitchell Park of 100 years ago, it wouldn't look the exact same. We wouldn't want to bring back all those amenities. We would want a park that meets the needs of our current community, but it would be activated. And then finally, that third box that needs to be checked is addressing the financial sustainability. So you already know that by addressing those physical limitations of the building itself, we would be able to generate more revenue from retail sales, from events, from educational programming. We'd also be able to address some of the other issues. So I mentioned at the beginning that we had a 100% increase in admissions this past year. So, right, that's incredible. However, that was 200,000 people. So 200,000 people came through our door last year. Well, if you look back 20 years ago, that number was closer to 500,000. So what's different? It's the marketing. And the Milwaukee County budget does not have the capacity to run the business side of the domes. It doesn't have the capacity to do that type of strategic marketing effort. So our vision addresses all of that and so much more. If you look at one of the key parts of our plan is that we would have a new partnership with Milwaukee County Parks. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I love the park staff, the leadership there. They're tremendous, right? It's a budget issue. And so by being able to partner with them in a new way, closer to what you would see with the Milwaukee County Zoo and the Zoological Society, we'd be able to address that sustainability issue with the business model. So the third takeaway, a solution is within reach. And I said we just have to have the key players come together, right, to make that happen. So what does that look like? Our funding would come as, think of it as a pie, and there's 3 slices to that pie. So the first is the philanthropic community. So we know, I mean, everybody loves the domes. Okay, not everybody loves the domes. I do hear some people say, I don't know, I'm not that into plants. One of our volunteers, she's highly allergic, and she's like, oh, I can't go to the domes, but I love it for other people. And so she helps us in all sorts of ways. But generally speaking, we love the domes, and the philanthropic community loves the domes, and they want to support us. We know that because we did a donor feasibility study earlier this year, and it came back with very promising results. So the philanthropic community's in, right? But they're going to be even more in if Milwaukee County makes a dollar per dollar commitment matching those donations. So now we're 2/3 of the way there, right? Those 2 slices of the pie are managed. And then the third piece is that we're looking at tax credits and other municipal funding options. So we're busy meeting with law firms and exploring these areas of funding that are realistic, and the domes would qualify for it. But it takes somebody in a leadership role exploring that. So that was always what was missing, right? 25 years of studies and no consensus and no path forward. What's different? Well, Friends of the Domes is now in a position to say, okay, we can lead the charge when it comes to the capital campaign, and we can lead the charge when it comes to this other municipal funding options. And we just want Milwaukee County to join us with that. So I will say today, I stand in front of you with a plan that has been unanimously approved by the Friends of the Domes Board of Directors. In addition, Milwaukee County and Parks leadership have voiced a support of the plan. They're in it. If we can make this happen, they're going to join us. So, right, we've taken the first definitive steps to making this a reality. Again, we talked about 3 takeaways. I know you guys know this. You could probably say it with me right now, but everyone does want a solution. And that solution that checks all those boxes, it's within reach. We only need the players that have a piece of this puzzle to come together to make it a reality. So what can you do? Well, join our newsletter mailing list or our email mailing list. Become a member of Friends of the Domes. Contact your elected officials and tell them you support a path forward for the Mitchell Park Domes. And I will say probably the most important piece of this is to, like my mother, remember that Sisu is within all of us. And with that, we can find a path forward for the domes. Thank you.
If you have a question for Christa, you can use the microphone here. And as a reminder, please keep your questions concise and topical.
30 seconds. This is a quick one, easy one. Alexander Mitchell, in the 1850s and 60s, richest man in Wisconsin by far. Wisconsin Club was his home, and he had greenhouses there. Mm-hmm. Mitchell Field, Mitchell Street. What's the tie to Mitchell Park from the wealth of the Mitchell family? Or is there one?
Well, that's a good question. And I would say it's loose at best, and it's definitely something we should explore more. You know, of course, the Mitchell family, they're the ones who sold the park to Milwaukee County, and they had done that, you know, back in the 1800s because they believed that everyone deserved access to green space. I meant to mention that the Mitchell Park was called one of the lungs of the city. So if you think about that, like, because it was our place to breathe. And that's definitely part of the Mitchell family's legacy. And yes, I'd love to have money from them too. Hi.
You said that you have a plan. You have the board of directors of your Friends of the Dome on board. You have support from the county. So what are the first two things that you need to move forward?
Thank you. Yes, we do have a plan. The first two things we need is something that has already been really agreed to by Milwaukee County, which is we needed them to hit the brakes, right? There was definitely this urgency of we need a resolution, and we need a resolution now, even if that resolution is demolition of the domes. So by hitting the brakes, we're not talking about for years and years, just for enough time for us to get our ducks in a row. That right there is number one, what we need. Second, we need everybody who has some capacity to be part of the solution to come forward and join our team. So we did a community meeting just a few weeks ago, and one of our board members, Ellen Wilkinson, stood up and said, "We can't do this alone." And she's very right. We can't. It's going to take all of us, but we are going to do it. Hi.
Christa, thanks for joining us. The current challenge is the physical condition of the domes and how that renovation and wherever is funded. Although for years, the larger challenge has been to get people to come out to the domes. So my question is, was there ever any consideration for repurposing the facility?
Absolutely. So we did actually, and this has been a long time coming. This vision was, you could arguably say it's 25 years in the making, because we took all of the studies that had been done before and considered every possible option. Now, in terms of another purpose, absolutely we could consider using it for another purpose, but it wouldn't deal with the issue that our community would lose its indoor conservatory, right? So if you think about Madison has 3 gardens, public gardens, in a city that size. And one of our commitments, Friends of the Dome's commitments, is to this idea of an urban conservatory, an urban green space. And so, for us, having the gardens be maintained was critical to that path forward.
Hi, I've heard a figure of 100 million for the domes, and that's compared to like 600 million to rehab the stadium. Right. And since the county is an entity of the state, what can be done at the state level to get state support for this?
Absolutely. So that's one of the things that we're pursuing in that third piece of the pie is state funding. So we are actively exploring the possibility that the state could fund a solution similarly to what they did with the Milwaukee Public Museum. So definitely on our list. Hi.
So to piggyback on that, what is the ask for the philanthropic community?
In terms of the amount, or yes? Well, and it's funny, I know that I did not provide a number, and I was very mindful of that. And the reason why is because, so as you guys maybe remember, the Concord Group did a study very recently that was presented to Milwaukee County Parks, and it had all of these numbers attached to these various futures for the domes. Well, we've gone back through and looked at those a little more carefully, and we have a lot of questions about maybe some double contingencies that were built into that, and other items that we just want to have addressed before we're comfortable coming out with a firm number. But I suppose that's one of the first stops that we're going to make, is coming back with, this is what really a campaign is going to look like, and then this is the amount that would fall into the philanthropic community.
Has any thought been given to spinning off the domes like what occurred with Milwaukee Public Museum? Because I think the philanthropic community is a little more interested in donating to a nonprofit than the county.
Right. So that's one of the things we would do in that new partnership that I mentioned. Not that it would become a Friends of the Domes facility, but that our partnership would grow and expand significantly. That would make it possible for us to attract additional donations from the philanthropic community. And in terms of, truly assuming responsibility, I mean, we're open to many different possibilities, and those are all things that we're currently exploring.
Separating what takes place in the domes versus the larger park area, Journey House and others use that space for sports and so forth. The drop in attendance from 500 to 200,000 is dramatic, and would be curious as to how much is related to security concerns. So the question is, separating the domes from the facility, the grounds, and understanding that security might connect with young individuals as well as others. Do you have any thoughts about repurposing or accelerating use of the grounds as opposed to the domes to address, to build community ownership in the area, and specifically with the young population?
Yes, absolutely. That is exactly. So when we say revitalize Mitchell Park, what we mean is turn it back to the community. And that might be an outdoor plaza, it might be soccer fields, it might be, many different amenities. But what we want is an active park. We want our community in the park, which would, and research has shown, addresses the security issues. And what's more, it's not just that it addresses the security issues facing the park itself, but it permeates out. The whole community becomes safer. There's lots of research that shows that that's what happens when you activate a park.
Good morning. My question is actually along the same lines. I was going to ask if you're working with the police because of the whole area there with the crime and the security concerns.
Yes. So, we're the county rangers are part of our security solution, as are the sheriff's department. So because it is a Milwaukee County facility and park, those are our two top law enforcement entities. However, the Milwaukee Police Department has been wonderful. They've come to many of our events just to, make sure that they're roaming the parking lots and ensuring the safety of our attendees. So definitely we see that as a partnership.
Hi, Brent F. Wasson, Milwaukee Small Business Coach. Love your focus and passion and energy around it. Although as a finance guy, I always twitch when I see presentations without numbers. You mentioned like the county's partnership with the zoo and the Zoo Society, but the attendance at the zoo is about 1.3 million a year. With the attendance where it is currently, and congratulations on the increase, what participation rate would you expect from the county based on its investments in other large projects that they've done around? Because I know the zoo is a pretty substantial commitment to the county, and they've done others. But what would you expect here would be reasonable in terms of percentage, not in terms of dollars?
So I would say a third, right? So, the idea is that they would match dollar for dollar every philanthropic contribution. And it's attractive for Milwaukee County because for every dollar they're putting in, they're getting $2 in investment. So whatever that ends up being, whatever that total amount ends up being, it's really a great deal for Milwaukee County, and they're seeing this as a very interesting solution.
A lot of the challenges you're facing are the result of deferred or non-existent maintenance. How does your plan look to that going forward once you've gotten the domes back where you would like them to be?
Yes, thank you for that question. So that sustainable business model that I talked about, it is attainable, but only if we address all of those facility limitations. That was part of, I like to say that this was a big, hairy, audacious problem, right? Because it wasn't just, we have all of this deferred maintenance, but it's bigger than that. The facility has limitations that limit the operating revenue. And when you address those, which we do in this plan, then we're able to generate a lot more operating revenue so that we can put money away for future maintenance.
Could you address some of the more recent changes to the domes? For instance, the new greenhouses that have been built. I took a tour recently and I was so impressed by what you've already got in the works, so that this vision of yours actually already has improvements on the ground that are taking place. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So about 10 years ago, Milwaukee County invested in the greenhouses that are at the backside of the domes. So in that photo I showed you, that predated the greenhouses. One of those is a event space. So it's a very large event space. It can seat dinners of 450. And you may have been there before if you ever attended. We used to have the farmers market, the indoor farmers market there as well. But it is a state-of-the-art facility. So that side of it, and it's interesting because we're marrying that old and new, but that side of the facility is it's beautifully done. And it's definitely an asset that we're looking at in how we, again, if you think of like creative shifting of the facilities. So one of the things that we would recommend, for example, is that the entrance to the domes shifts to that greenhouse entrance. The reason why is because right now, one of those things that's impeding admissions is that people have to stand outside in the cold for as much as an hour. In the holiday show and the train show, they're standing there waiting to get in, but there's this big long hallway that's indoors. And if we shift the entrance to that, we now can shift the gift shop into the education center. And so people are walking right by our great big new gift shop, and they're able to get inside sooner. So it's those kinds of, when I say creative shifting of the facility, that is exactly what we're looking at.
Thank you, Christa.
Thank you.